Is the magic happening now? That's good? All right, very good. So we have three poets tonight: Alan Bernheimer, Kit Robinson, and Neely Cherkovski. Alan is going to read first. Uh, I know he and Kit were literary fellows well back in the day in college, and obviously have had a very fecund lifetime friendship, which continues to this very moment. We hope it survives the evening. Hello. What happened to the? Yeah, the volume went down suddenly. I don't know. Okay. The gods are having their way with us once again. But oh yes, oh yes. So, Alan, when I noticed one of the bios mentioned your some of your teachers at Yale, and Peter Sheldall, who many of us have enjoyed for many years as a critic and commentator on the art scene. He's really a very special person who has been gravely ill of late, but and of course the late Ted Berrigan, but who caught my name that Bartlett Giamatti was one of your teachers, and of course those of us who are baseball fans, that name has a lot of impact and a very treasured memory. Uh, but Alan has been, is an important part of the language poet scene that was thrived here, especially in the '70s, and has continued in various forms since. He and Kit did a program on KPFA in the American Tree, was it? Yeah, in the American Tree. A lot of the stuff was happening at the Grand Piano Cafe at. Let's see, the Langton Arts, and gosh, what was it? Another. Yeah, it was very very important. Everybody had to come to terms with the radical notions of the language poets, to the dismay of some and the delight of others. But it's all, I think a lot of this has come together over the years too. The people understanding the impetus that inspired certain developments and what have you. So we're very delighted that to have Alan starting off the evening tonight, and I'm sure you have some other little biographical tidbits to share with us, perhaps, or perhaps not. Or we can just cut to the chase, as you prefer. Okay, Alan Bernheimer.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Bird and Beckett. It's an incredible pleasure to read here tonight with my old friend Kit and my newer friend Neely. Um, Neely, who should be the next poet laureate of San Francisco, except he probably wouldn't want the job. The only autobiographical tidbit. Can you hear okay, Neely? Is it loud enough? Good. The only biographical tidbit I would throw in is that studying with some of those New York School poets, I always have said that I have one foot in the New York School and one foot in the language school. And when that boat leaves the dock, you can imagine what happens to me. I'm going to read a few poems first from a book of mine that came out a couple of years ago called From Nature. There's some copies here that Eric has kindly stocked, and the books by Kit and Neely as well. And then I'll read some newer work. This is called Seals Sleeping. Seals sleep as they sink in the sea. Seal sleeping underwater, then waking up. How seals sleep with only half their brain. Seals sleeping stock photos. Half-awake seals help explain sleep disorder. How does SEAL Team 6 get to sleep? Seals sleeping between the rocks, stock footage. Elephant seals sleeping royalty-free. Max ear seals earplugs. Crab-eater seal still sleeping. Apnea ashore and at sea. Madness seals the deal for sleeping with sirens. Sleeper sharks snag sleeping seals. Diving seals and meditating yogis, sleeping seals and stone chats, nice marine seals sleeping on the snow in Antarctica, seals, wall art, and home decor. Celebrity alteration. Other people's wisteria fails to unlock past. So many lime-lit white walls, even Pinkertons have to sleep. Problem is the material, keeping self company. Fits a lot of descriptions. Emotional outcast, concourse of atoms. Hard to have posthumous fun. You people are filled with trace amounts of mystique. Ibis in Egypt, for Robert Harris. Put paper in the past, like a fish at night, a huge circling above the polished Nile. Softer water, closer shave, wiseness in the noise. Everybody's somebody's fool. Apologize for inconvenience before I forget flirtatious spaces and tales of place. Dirty ice on the side. What's the matter with this line? Prehistoric peeps find middle ground and wallow in it. No better place for learning about stars than stir. It's not all damaged logic and inspiration at every breath. Protected witness, for Aaron Simon. You want to look good in green your whole life, crisp and cryptic, not a person who can't spend change or act like a pronoun any good at smiling. A little oblivion goes a long way, with immense solos cluttering terrains. But current stuff is lots more fun, too busy to be human, one more at a time. Decaf emoji. Have I lost my delighted attitude with telescoping pencils and recorded atmosphere? The shadows are having fun getting a hush on. Apologies for inconvenience, keeping dignity under hat. Palpably concocted and tributary to the wind. It's anyone's guess swimming into sight at the Heart Sleeve Club. While some goodwill minds patience from a racing perspective, the scenery looks better without you in it. Faint mowing at the edge of sound. Fugitive thoughts struggle to divide the air. Celery and violets. Sunday morning emptiness, whom fortune has not blessed, still rages and weeps. Breakfast. Forgetting words the moment you hear or read them is one way to avoid plagiarizing. But just keep their flavor and then try expressing that in your own words, as if you could own words. You can't even keep thoughts from slipping away. They're the slipperiest of all the slippery things in life. The hotel elevator that rises way past the roof and slips across a higher landscape, a different neighborhood. Why not ask if any of these places will be open for breakfast? Dejection. Reasons to be cheerful evaporate faster than usual in the present's sickly grip. Is a terrible thought to begin the day. But what was so great about the past when you think it through? A cavalcade of missed opportunities, false starts, and lost moments. It not only could, but does get worse for a congenital optimist down on his uppers. What use is despair, if not to wallow in? Resignation would be a relief, and find a boisterous option for the black service after me at times. My friend Kit managed to get a whole book of poems out of the pandemic. I got one. Author unknown. I used to be a know-it-all, but now a cloud of unknowing has settled in my psyche, and knowingness is less or more unsettling than getting used to forgetting. Apple, table, penny, dog, book, grass. As best we can, for Jean Day. It's given to me to rewrite history, meeting the end of displeasure. Nobody has good thoughts at midnight, not sleeping with that silly grin. The voice in your head wants to hear itself talk, and never long off stage. We elaborate as best we can, countable and uncountable nouns thrown to the hot night bird. Many people are told you have to put up with this. Lost in the aftermath. Don't wear out words. Give your ghosts a rest. I wouldn't change nervous systems. Neither geography nor tranquility can come all at once. The past gnaws into the future as fast as my feet will carry me. Flight risk for Miles Champion. My birds will twitter on the branch of other things, a therapy of what no laughing meter sleeps to forget. Why don't you go away and come back 10 years ago on the pajama plan? The pond is a regret. Too much to dream. Almost everyone was someone's friend who does not exteriorize themselves. There is paper in the hat, mind behind face, illusion of being everywhere. Little birds breaking dry sticks. What is it with verbs? Place identity swims into sight, trying not to be careless. Remember the night. Am I really so much sharper this morning? Or is the Wednesday crossword just a misplaced Monday? Obvious answer. And how come I remember last night's dream, rewiring Larry Fagan's phone, plus the next one of a seismically safe basketball arena with every surface hung from cables, but seating only a few dozen, when almost always dreams recede into that other room behind the forget-me door as soon as I swim into the dusty world of today. Grains of Paradise for Brandon Brown. This looks like a good beach day to stretch out on and swim in the tears of Pepe Lemoko poetic realism with that hope against nope in the mouth of shadows, a kind of moron gas keeping track of loss. Life is broken as a cue to everyone gently, little figurine whistles starting out in empty rooms like it was yesterday. The sky blue sky folding under your smooth noodle too, a kind of way to egg on the wonder. Living Daylights for Pam Osborne. Progress gets all the best history, seeing us waving from such great heights of verbal economy as bon mi for bon mot, finding things so much more fulfilling than losing them the older you get, or not, depending on the thrilling confusion. I'm not what you think I am. I just try to be this way, inhabiting hats to change eras. Words wear out over time, and it's melancholy missing nightfall for late naps or matinees. Things like me behave themselves, don't rise up and go haywire, parade across the squeaky parquet, from silence to silence, soft ethereal twinkling constituting an and in itself. Random brushes for Jeff Young. Dead celebrities can't really mind our dining out on random brushes we had in their salad days, or they shouldn't have been famous to begin with. The only coin left for us to trade in. So few of them, so many of us. What are the chances of that encounter? What if we'd been 10 seconds late or early? Think how many we just missed. A whole autographed hound's book of flimsy renown, transparent cleft chin, fleeting arched brow, whistle of air through that tooth gap, the shimmering veneer, all those glances burnished into a recognizable gleam. Transparent bird. I'd like to show you my life, warts and all, but more than non-warts part. Deep sparkle, no wasted motion, insides all out, every moment invented, best of habits notwithstanding who can't be damaged, landing limp against the laugh, saffron receptors at the max, lest we rely on consorts. You'll get over being young, once upon a time. Self-evidence for Maureen Owen. Could we find a place for the night, acting like you have forever, entranced with ambiguity and dreams of squashing evil? Only words at the edge of sleep are of any use to me now, without further adieu. Some things can be done as well as others. Baltic twilight springs to mind in the distance of egg tempera, close navigation crossing the glitter path among lost days of caviar, pockets of apocrypha I forgot to remember. Thank you.
Helen, that was so wonderful. There wasn't a line that I didn't want to hear again, or a poem that I didn't absolutely say, I would love to hear that again.
I'll do it again.
Yeah, no, if it was me, I'd go for that, absolutely. So our next poet is going to be Kit Robinson, who is the longtime creative sidekick, so to speak, of Alan. And Kit is, to me, when the language poets attained some local prominence in the 70s, among them, and some of them were off into some pretty arcane theoretical stuff. And I always admired, something about Kit was always extraordinarily grounded and always put me at ease, even when I was reading, certain magazines and quite at sea about what was going on or supposed to be going on. So, and I know Kit is, I think, well over 24 collections of poetry, and he's been an essayist about various cultural topics. But of course, the thing that he probably is the proudest of at this point is he plays in a charanga band, a Cuban tres, a stringed instrument. And I know the pleasure that gives one to, I'm rather an aficionado of Afro-Cuban, the folkloric stuff as a percussionist. And I'm sure there are few things more thrilling to your ongoing project than the pleasure you get from that. So anyway, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Kit Robinson.
I'm tempted to bring the mic up, but I'll try sitting, see how that works. Thank you for that introduction, Michael. That was great. I you've exposed me in my passion for Cuban music. I was going to bring a card for you guys because I want to pitch you on having our band play here. I turn on the Bird and Beckett channel on my phone quite often in the evening, and it just pops right up. And you guys have great music here all the time, so I totally appreciate that. This is my new book, Quarantina. I wrote it over the course of the last few years, mostly during the pandemic. Check the time. Okay. And I'll just start reading. The door swings open. I write one line, then I forget it. What you read is the result of an ongoing process. Sun comes out, leaves fall, revolution simmers, politics as usual, sleeping dogs lie. Absolutely everything is a big idea that slips the mind when you least expect it. Remember the main thing, alternating current. Forget about it. Day's passage, rhythm of instances. The trees chime in. Energy builds a succession of turnpikes all over this land. Civilization is a good idea. Somebody should try it sometime. Energy flagpoles leave nothing to happenstance. There's more where that came from, or so they say. The door swings open to a late morning world of possibility when you forget your wallet, glasses, phone, and keys and step into space, a fellow voyager reading time like a book, making out distant stars, free as a bird. Anatomy of a Frink for Bob Kaufman, written after reading Neely's terrific collected Bob Kaufman. Ceremonial instances of flight, the wildflowers tremble in happenstance, Russian oligarchs bench press exchange rates, sewer rats upend water tables. Who will drop a dime on the president? What were you doing before this? A long line of integers, people coming and going. Some are dead and some are living. The way back is a picture painted by hand. All my ancient car mechanics convene at the celestial bagel shop, where the legendary Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence celebrate Halloween on a Toyota truck bed. That snapshot just slipped my mind when I wasn't looking, the opposite of staying on track, in the parlance of accounts receivable, flattened by pelting rain. The road to the Palace of Zero is paved with X's. All info's a combination of one and none. When in doubt, cut the house in half. The time trials start at Land's End. Eidetic imagery crisscrossing ambient sound, radio hammers, dark space, lean-to abode. Swirling colors say hello to who you are not. The intricate rhythmic patterns of old Tangier flush up against electric pink. Seismic shifts cause vibrations eons off. Bernal Heights for Neily Cherkovski. This is one of my narrative poems. We were talking earlier about narrative poems and poems where everything is all jumbled up. And Alan felt that he did both, and I wasn't really sure. I hadn't thought about it before. Bernal Heights for Neely. Walking up Mission Street from 24th Street BART, past La Taqueria, where we used to go with Airy, the corner of Cesar Chavez as Mission bends right and upward. The old Sears building is being repainted. Rocapulco is silent where Caesar's Latin palace once stood. New businesses and old and vacant shops, a diverse mix of low and middle income pedestrians of quiet integrity, trying to get over now that the 70s are ancient history. Up Virginia Street, the heart awakens, that curve to the right on the high side, on the high busy side. Left on Eugenia past Coleridge where Robert and Dina, and then later Tom and Galen lived. And Bonneview, the street of Ralph, our early collaborations. Misremember your address and climb all the way to the top of Andover. Puffy coat off by now and sweating. A woman's voice says, I don't know that name. So check again, and sure enough, then back down and a block or two to find you sitting in front of your house, chatting with a neighbor. That was when Neely invited me over. We had a lovely time. Pandemic Rhapsody. The planet as prison, each house a cell. We swim in a sea of unknowing. The planet as forest, each household a tree. We gather in the shade of many branches. The planet as ocean, each household a boat. We search for a mast on the horizon. The planet as city, each household an apartment. We sit by a window of opportunity. The planet as text, each household a sentence. We study the length of a day. The planet as dream, each household a sleeper. We fly high above vertiginous landscapes. The planet as wildfire, each household a hearth. We burn in the cauldron of our desires. The planet as war zone, each household a battalion. We must reinforce our supply lines. The planet as desert, each household an oasis. We cultivate gardens of enlightenment. The planet as mountain, each household a stream. We flow in time to the sea. Walt's words. The beautiful uncut hair of graves, the faint red roofs of mouths. There is really no death. All goes onward and outward. Nothing collapses. Not contained between my hat and boots, I am of old and young, of foolish as much as the wise. I resist anything better than my own diversity. I breathe the air and leave plenty after me, and am not stuck up, and am in my place. Conformity goes to the fourth removed. I wear my hat as I please, indoors and out. Each moment, and whatever happens, thrills me with joy. That walk up my stoop, I pause to consider if it really be. A morning glory at my window satisfies me more than the metaphysics of books. To feel the puzzle of puzzles that we call being, I launch all men and women forward with me into the unknown. Inland and seacoast we go. We pass all boundary lines in an average, unending procession. A few quadrillions of eras, a few octillions of cubic leagues. They are but parts. Anything is but a part. There is in me, I do not know what it is, but I know it is in me. It is a word unsaid. It is not in any dictionary, utterance, symbol. Something it swings on, more than the earth I swing on. It is not chaos or death. It is form, union, plan. It is eternal life. It is happiness. The last scud of day holds back for me. I depart as air in eddies and lacy jags. I bequeath myself to the dirt, to grow from the grass I love. If you want me again, look under your boot soles. Missing me in one place, search another. I stop somewhere, waiting for you. Walt Whitman. This poem is incredible. You should immediately memorize it and tell it to all your friends. If you read this poem over and over, you will be better able to read and understand other poems. Any poem. Life goes on and off. Death goes off and on. Shit happens, just like in this poem, which is like an elixir or vaccine. Sometimes this poem is like overhearing a conversation in the next yard, a moment of relaxation in your otherwise busy day. Other times it's more like thinking about something, and then thinking about something else. It never stops, even when interrupted by a passing train. In that sense, this poem is immortal, insofar it is always on the move, to no particular end. When you dream a poem, the poem is often odd, weird, asyntactic, or wild. This poem is totally normal. It teaches one how to live normally under the most abnormal of conditions. Put one foot in front of the other, is how the ancestors put it. They even put it into this poem, so that anyone would be able to see what this poem of our life on earth is made of. Yemaya. Yemaya is the Cuban Orisha or saint of the ocean, and her colors are blue and white. Since you gave birth to the world, we can never get to the bottom of you, and must content ourselves with your shimmering surface that laughs in the sun. The sky is reflected in your blue. You surround us. We long to live by your side. In waves do you raise your skirts, in dance both day and night. Because you generate all of love, we adore you. I misread that. It's because you generate all of life, we adore you. But love works too. Hell no. Where there's smoke, there's causality, going all the way back to before, when the backbone of the American economy arrived from Africa, when Crazy Horse went to the white man's fort and never came back, a bayonet stuck in his back. Before, wild World War III, guns, fire, and plague sat down to tea under a red sun to rough out a plan for the consummate consumption of any and all land. The other night, Jacob Blake was shot 7 times in the back by the police while getting into his car where his 3 young sons witnessed the crime. Today, the NBA players canceled their playoff games in Orlando. In protest, I'm going to cancel this poem. Premiere Etude. The mind moves as water moves, in waves, wind at their back. The mind moves as fire moves, in lines, under heavy smoke. The mind moves as earth moves, spinning through darkness and light. The mind moves as the body moves, on 2 legs, 1 step at a time. The mind moves as the planets move, elliptically around the sun. What is a tree? What is a tree? A tree is a premature book. In its leaves, I read the history of the future, more specific than you would ever have thought. What is a chair? A chair is an empty person, relaxing in part sun, part shade, to wind chimes touching in the breeze. What is a fence? What is a fence? A dead leaf in a knothole would have you believe in the inexhaustibility of phenomena. What is a line? It connects 2 points and droops a little in the middle to describe a shallow curve with no towels hanging from it in bright sun. What is a cone? A dirty orange traffic warning next to a concrete block with a white plastic cap, the base for an umbrella. What are flowers? Black-eyed Susan climbing over the fence, snow in summer, deep red geraniums at home among rocks, kids on break from Zoom. Variant foot. The second shot, I got a buzz, a safety high. The world goes round and the other side comes up, so now I can't write what I felt. Herman Melville to his friend Hawthorne. A surplus of incidents between talking and driving, tale of the missed turn. At least somebody stood up for the music. I find patches of it now and then. Now we can even hear Wind on Mars calling us home. Hello, hello? The piano lays out. The horn continues on alone. Quiet, I hear footprints. The last comedian hanging out by the hat check. A blues as casual as seasonal labor lights up the night sky. It's been a long year, a ghostly time, and still we walk among the dead. From day to day, that's what a day is, a frame for multiple viewpoints. Somewhere along the way, I started writing in a more accessible way, more communicative, I guess you could say, but always with something else, something more than can be easily said of a return to earth. The singer speaks from the heart. The chorus responds with affirmation and consent. We were here all along, even as we hurried along. And I'll close with this one. It's called Bilongo, and Bilongo is the name of a very popular Cuban song from the mid-20th century, also known as La Negra Tomasa. Not a key change. Tempo stays the same players, and yet something changes. The piano goes on forever. The rhythm section stays in the pocket. Time stretches out. The faces relax. The bodies move in time with drum and bass on the floor of being, in case you hadn't noticed. How much goes on when you least detect it? Variables fleshing out possibility in the structure of life happening all around. Words arrive from other languages, repeat themselves fearlessly, an assertion of truth born through repetition. It's the same all over. We recognize each other in the community of song, circling back since time immemorial. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. No, that was wonderful. I think Quarantina, you think there's a suggestion of something claustrophobic, and I think Kit's rendition of that enclosure is anything but claustrophobic. So definitely open to the world and to euphoric impositions on us, which is what the world gives us much of the time. And the concluding part of the three featured poets is going to be Neily Cherkovski, who I think the first time he was read maybe in San Francisco at the old, was on Union Street, the old, Neely, what was the damn place? The what? Yes, thank you, the intersection. Yes, it was a long time ago, and I think that may have been like kind of his debut in North Beach was at the intersection. Is that right, Neely? Am I making this up? Who knows? Yeah, you don't know. I don't know either, but it sounds good. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. But, he soon became a stalwart of the North Beach scene. It's funny how artistic outputs are connected to places very much. And I think Neely really became a central figure in North Beach as just a presence on every level, supporting other poets and just being a general raconteur and a man about town. And he's continued that, although he's now in Bernal Heights, which is a very different neighborhood, but at the same time, it's one of the great bohemian enclaves in San Francisco, such as they are at this point. And he's a prolific author, many volumes of poetry. He's a biographer. Has written estimable works about Bukowski and Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and a wonderful Whitman's Wild Children, a great overview of the American poetic impulse. So it gives me a great pleasure to present Neily Cherkovski.
Yes, okay. A lot of light. That's good. So, I realize this has become like a security blanket, like Charlie Brown's blanket in the cartoon. Oh, can you hear me now? It's a little bit better. These poems are the opening to a book of selected poems which span 2022 to 1959. So the book will open with the newer poems and go back to that long ago decade. And I was surprised because looking at the poems from way back then and the poems now, they didn't seem any different to me. They seem like, maybe not surprisingly, the same voice. And reminded me of something Robert Frost wrote. You would not find me changed from him you knew, only more sure of all I thought was true. Well, and politically, I was the same then that I am now, for example. White that shines. Drywall is politically correct. Your mind finds a neighbor. He has an assault weapon. The cops surround him. No way will he surrender. The road is white. What are you going to do now? White snow, black tar, red rover. Blood that shines, veins of going, bombs in the golf cart. Who found you? Who found you? Foxy, what's his name? His movie star smile, plaster of Paris for his heart. While that shines, shadows that trickle, sight of the sparrow, sign of dying. We see what is here. We bind an invisible book. Then we take a tractor out of the barn, a beautiful red tractor, ramble up the road. Diana smiles. I am watching the road ahead. Country of army trucks. The soldiers wave. Tractor spouts and sputters where the road curves. Just below the Crusader fort. I'd see Diana 35 years later in Park Slope. Pieces of light, evening, sparkle night. It accounts for signs for roadside assistant. I'll be snowing on the mountainside. A big rig skids. We have just enough time. Then we go tumbling for a couple of decades. Minutes trickle and then ooze. The police launched an assault on a discount building supply company. We think we might be able to organize Abraham Lincoln and Crazy Horse. It comes to this: men shackled, bound, unable to escape. We awaken every morning to the sound of smoke, difficult to enjoy the deck, waiting for the alarm system to fail and to make distant signals. When I was young, there was a peach orchard. Friends smoked cigarettes in the alcove just outside the bar as if nothing could happen. Don't need to ask. Across the street, bread lines, fortune telling, 24 hours a day, orange lettering, 7 days a week. I don't have to pay attention to understand and maybe to take notice. Savor the Negro universe. Green carpet, solar system, pieces of space, black light, red silence, blue doors, splendor, falsehood, neighborhood with no parking signs, silence breaks. home to the ruling class. Put your mouth where white rabbits run for cover. Jim Bridger, mountain man, wrestling a grizzly up by Pine Creek like nobody noticed. A spare tire in the lake. How do you explain? I'm still figuring that one out, but this is for Ukraine. I wrote this poem and I put it on Facebook, and I thought how wonderful it would be to see it in Russian. And 2 hours later, it came from a translator in Moscow in Russian. That was quite some deal. And he since translated a few other poems of mine. And I asked him how he's doing. This is months ago. It was the last time I heard from him. He said, I'm doing just fine here. So I hope he's okay. Simple enough not to say anything. Let it sting. And what do almond trees swaying in the afternoon have to say of our schoolyard? I thought of the war, no victory, only a spare tire left outside. One last man singing Waltzing Matilda on a beach in Australia I'd seen in a movie when I was a kid. Many wars through the world as I sit lakeside or hike into the wilderness. I'd sit in college classrooms wanting to say something, nothing to be said. Man is a failed idea. Russian troops advancing through the fields, punishing the world. Peace, a tattered veil. I should have said something, but I loved the way from the bluff at Fort Funston, cawing of seabirds like airplanes over scrub oak. I wanted to say something when I was a kid, studying for bar mitzvah, but the rabbi commanded, suffer in silence, let the nightmare remain. Now Russian music soars into breathlessness, and overhead of refugees, I'll keep silent to myself. Walk the hall of our synagogue, 1957, 12 years old, Hiroshima. Is this what is left even yet? Let us blossom like roses. May we be so young. I see Russian troops making their move. I watch as poppies flee burning embers. I should have been there before that has ever been possible. Men tried but failed. Desires huddled in branches of trees. I stand out of the classroom, winter withering as the atomic age advances, listless to talk of nuclear deterrence. I knew we were going to punish ourselves. If I had spoken, there would be no breadlines. If I had stood my ground, Ukrainian earth would rise with the sun. My grandmothers and grandfathers would have spoken of the land and its bounty. Mein father owned a mill, Granny said, near Kiev. She died and the world died. Birds were clothed, woven of wheat, That was the end until all spun out of control. This is how I see it through the years into the future. Bare bones, rapid fire distortion, out and out lies. China, Russia, America, Prague, Budapest, Beijing, Rio. Do you make a paper crane out of madness and lay it before the shrine? Notre Dame is burning. Many of us saw the burning of the roof of the Notre Dame Cathedral, and like a lot of people, I just burst into tears uncontrollably. I had spent so many times there over like 45, 50 years span meditating precisely on the ceiling. Notes scribbled on the ceiling, ordinary like common crows. You might find the park fighting now, looking for an angle. Communicate notes. Make no perfection. The sane meanders. Honestly, there is no such thing as the truth. When I entered the cathedral, darkness held my writing brain. I scribbled madness. I gnawed the Roman window. I entered my heart and found ornate crevices and corners. When the ceiling ignited, men began to cry like watching a burning child engulfed in flames. Pause in the nave, where slaughtered silence joins monolithic stone. I opened the sliding glass door back home and stood on the deck, befuddled, angry for not having known. I should have been on the back of one of the crows flying to Paris. The ceiling kept burning. Experts said it would never end, no escape. I believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. I don't give a rat's ass what you believe. The ceiling fell, venerable planks destroyed. What do you expect? No mistake, only beauty. I enjoy writing every letter clear, scribe commentaries all night long. Grab an angel and think about rebirth. Trust the medieval labyrinth. Let your mind falter. Let the maze overwhelm your thought processes. Flames remind us of where we are headed one fine afternoon in a taxi without meter. So 2 more short poems. Looming Cone. That's C-O-N-E. A sound glittered over anti-Semitic apple trees. It must have been 5. I'd pace the terrace and dream of Columbus and other adventurers. I met a restive prison guard who collected flowers for his imaginary garden. You can't punish a man enough with mountain vistas and vineyards, no matter your metaphysics. The only thing that matters is your philosophical knowledge. be it Heidegger or Heidegger Nietzsche. Ah, looking good, looming cone, nature luminous now forever. Morality belongs to mankind because of rain. You must understand the natural connection. Nature botches nothing. The bright fistful of sunlight, beautiful canopy, endless. And last one is called Cuban Emigre. And it's a scene in the Cafe Trieste where I used to spend my days and nights. Bloated, quiet. He drank cappuccino at the center table long after the revolution, and into a darkness only he was permitted to enter. He was the Cuban emigre of the Cafe Trieste back in the days of America Vespucci, who would say, hell, hello. He would smile a fat smile, perfect now, perfecter of brown teeth. The same ugly shirt always wore the same, and maybe he would ask, how are you doing? Have you written more poems? But mostly he said nothing, as one winter followed another, and the sky grew to be the color of rustic tin, and Papa Johnny died of old age, and a whole younger set operated the elegant machine. And then one day, someone said the Cuban had died 2 months earlier while shopping at a drugstore on Polk Street, but it must have been a faint echo or fantasy, and he hadn't died at all, which is why we are forced to wonder and to bend our heads in forgiveness. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you, Michael, and thank you, Eric, for the evening, and thank you, people, for coming.
So people who want to sign up for the open, I guess it's going to be a relatively short open thing. I guess we'll have 8 minutes break now between starting that. I know Scott has signed up, and I see a few other candidates in the back there.
So keep
Churkovsky poetry, 1959, 2022, and there's plenty more to come.
keep in mind the poets have books here, and they actually like to sell their books, oddly enough. And not only that, but we're giving them a tiny honorarium, and if you we'd like to honor their collective 160 years in poetry, or whatever it is, 180 years in poetry, 50 years since 1972 and 4, right? And they go back another 5 or 10 years before that. Okay, their collective 180 years in poetry. And it might be if you put in a penny per year, that would be too generous. Put in like a dime per decade. No, do more. Anyway, do what you can. It's nice. It's just nice. Thank you guys so much. Alan, Kit, Neely. Yeah. All right, 10 minutes or so.
Scott is reading. Huh? Your friend Scott is reading. It won't be very long. Okay. There's not very many people here. Yeah, okay.
I figured the whole
Everyone
audience
here
was
reads.
people who study.
What's that?
I was thinking the whole audience was here for you.
They are. I mean, you gotta pay.
Neely, I'm Alan's wife, Melissa Bravo. I think I met you very briefly once.
Those are all great.
a preoccupation of his at that point of his life, but just where, yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, he became the commissioner of baseball, and he was one of virtually the only enlightened commissioners. I mean, they've had a lot of devious clowns. Yeah. Really, that whole, wow, that's wild, yeah. Wow. All right, guys, so we have a relatively brief number of open readings. I'm going to start off with a couple of things. This is called At the Party. I paraphrased Schopenhauer. Old age is like the end of a costume party when all the masks come off. The sexagenarians wept. The centenarians grinned sheepishly. Everyone between 70 and 100 began cakewalking, breakdancing, doing the juba and the comparsa, the bomba and the shuffle. Let the cards fall where they may, they shouted. Long live eternity, long live disarray. Shut up, we're trying to sleep, yelled the callow youths. Without failure and tedium you haven't lived, I shouted back, sleepless and disheveled. But my real wealth is in Harriet Tubman $20 bills. The trek from callow youth who knew little to old man who knows less was arduous, but not without its sublime buffoonery and confusion. I mixed a few metaphors, participated in my era's epistemological crisis, and danced some polyrhythms to a dead heat. I often went too far or pulled up short. I cried wolf when I should have cried fire. I pigeonholed the parrots but let the ravens run free. I was a tongue-tied polyglot, a hapless grammarian skulking in back streets for the golden word. As for the moon, I inhaled its dark fragrance. As for the stars, I let them sweat. All right. How many baseball fans are in the house? Just one? All right. Well, I'm going to conclude with a little a baseball poem from way back. There used to be a bar in the Mission called the Smile a While. I think it was at 25th and Mission. It's become many things. Recently, it was the Mission Pie site, and it's now a falafel. Palestinian woman has it. It's very nice. But so this is compared to beauty. Sitting in the Smile a While, watching the giants in my filthy work clothes. A diabetic is pitching for Cincinnati. I've always adored that word. I love the name Urbano Lugo, too, but maybe not as much as Candido Maldonado. As a kid, I craved a last name like Maverick, Monk, or Mignoso. Mike Mignoso would have had the alliterative flair I needed at 14 to put reality on the defensive. Buddy Bell just walked. That's all for Vida Blue. In a dark room, nobody can tell Lord Byron from Plato, except for the propeller on his hat. It's the 8th inning. Who's on first? Truth or beauty? All right. Thank you. And so gives me Scott Bird with his beautiful vest. This is the first of the.
Thank you, Michael. I'll read one old poem and one new poem.
Say your name again.
Scott Bird. Yeah. This is an older poem. I watched the lead belly of the mountain grow bare of ice caps and snow, and I watched the river slow down to a trickle. I watched the lumber poor carpenter falter in the streets and barter his last dime for a nickel. I watched the young girl learned to sing before she learned to write, and she taught me how to see birds and fish in the trees. I watched the Navajo grandmother dig a finger's well in the red earth and use it to slake the thirst of her dying flock of sheep, and then ladle one for her own red dirt throat. I watched the redwood forest, the mother redwood, tell her children to sweat in their red coats as the spider-woven nape of fire crept across the forest floor. I watched the young boy take his first steps and dance in the threshold of an open door. I watched the cold leaves of autumn give way to a dry, dry cold, and the old man rolled his last cigarette, dumped the rest of his tobacco fold into the black earth. I watched all of the people hide, and the halls of justice flooded to the pillars by an unjust tide. I watched this wicked thing in its throes. I watched how the rich and powerful took a spaceship to the far-off distant planet Mars. I heard the screaming and rejoicing of the stars, and I watched this thing as a child watches the first of the falling snow, watches and waiting. From now on, I think I'll no longer watch and wait. I think I'll no longer think. From now on, I think I'll just sing. And this is a little ode to North Beach that I wrote a couple of days ago. It's called 1 Month at Baba Yaga's. North Beach, thou art a wooden house on chicken-legged stilts, 1,000 triple masts grown in the gawk holes beneath your breast, and you sigh, knowing first and last that you are the great neighborhood of this Yerba Buena island, which it will soon become, come big ocean earthquake, rise of seawall breached. I reached for your hand, your neighborly, tenderly hand, and you grasped back in the clap of cathedral bells. You who swim in the minty whores upon that hill of Coitus Tower, where we still steal a few moments of starry sex beneath the coffee berry Californicus in the beautiful shapes of poetry, and where the lichen-crusted tombs of poets past creep down and cast a pall over any hungover evening. But you who are a witch coven haven built in straw mud-pattied nest, and in the stained glass twinkling tinsel telegraph. Thank you.
And August has one of the great dogs of all time as a companion.
And I'm very lucky to have her. This is our autumn line of toilet bowl brushes. And if anyone would like one, they can see me about it after the show. I thought I just had it. Do I get a break for being old? Yes. Okay, good. That was very odd.
August, are we getting close?
Yes, I really am.
Get close to
The windows are undressed, like the sky on a starless night. If one had a ladder set up against the shadowed side of the house, one could watch over those who sleep there. One might think that a night without moon left them doomed. One would whisper the way one does, unintentionally, at midnight, not wishing to disturb, but merely join the crickets in the psalm-given grass, kept low by gravity, legs rubbing together in mad crescendos, ransoming the silence in their orchestration, and by ransom they keep the purest part of silence for their song. Thank you.
Thank you, August. Next, Edward.
Hello. I wrote this piece on a rough day. It's called Coming Up for Air. I'm coming up for air. God, I can't breathe. When will I reach the surface? How much faster can I attempt to leave? The waves are crushing me now, throttled against the sand and the coral. The saline water ruining my tastes, indicative of my current morals. How wretched am I to miss the sunrise in my life when I was young, full of compromise and joy, always with a melody to be sung. Trapped now by my own doing, I stretch for the surface, a dark substance overtaking me, this feeling so damn merciless. I break through the water with vigor and spirit I used to possess, a renewed sense of hope, a small form of success. So here I float like a buoy. What will be the next course of action? Will I recoup all that was once lost? Breathing, my only source of traction. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. And the concluding reader of the evening is Kazue.
Hello, my name is Kazuya Watanabe, and this poem is called Reptile. Um, Reptile. It started to snow early on the northern island that year. 13 years old, and just came home from a long stroll on the freezing beach with S, the first love of my life. All I could think of at that time was S's deep voice, the minty smell of his breath when we talk, the way he held my hand, and his well-aligned white teeth when he smiles. Anything else, especially the hexagons and pentagons in geometry textbooks, paralyzed my brain. Nothing was far from intriguing than those flat images. Not sure if that's why Professor Saito started coming to my house. Sat with me for 1 hour every Thursday night, staring at those images together. I blame everything on my father's office. That gray, square, closed space. 4 ugly office desks and chairs stuck to each other. It's a mystery till this day why he was hired to tutor me. I didn't want him. Plus, who paid for it? With my family business going downhill, no money to spare for my private math tutor. Professor Saito is so majime. My aunt repeated the word many times. The adjective that refers to diligent and square. It made me think of those geometric figures, always two-dimensional, stubborn and tough. Tough figures that just sat there not cooperating with me to solve their mystery. Professor Saito, my aunt's colleague at the elementary school, 40ish, a devout Christian, married with 4 kids, and with the best reputation a person could have in his community. A reptile, a creature sticking out his tongue, big eyes, black rimmed glasses, long neck, head slightly sticking out forward, tanned rough skin. Can a reptile be majime? 1 hour felt like a millennium. I looked forward to the 10 minutes break, not because of the over-dry cake and tea, but because it was suffocating. Suffocating looking at the flat figures and questions whose answers didn't come out as easily as I wanted, while while the reptile's body was very close to me. Each lesson, he put himself closer to me, inch by inch. The change was sometimes so subtle. Sometimes I thought I was just imagining it. It started as we were looking at my textbook together, him drawing his chair next to mine and holding the arms of my chair. My daughter is getting fat. You are in good shape. You must be good at sports. His breath smelled like coffee. A month passed. His arms started to touch and hold my shoulder. The lesson, on the other hand, continued as if nothing was moving forward. No changes in my progress. My grade was the same. I wanted to ask a question. Is this how a majime person teaches? But the question was often erased by my inability to come up with answers to the geometry quiz. I felt powerless because I couldn't answer them, no matter how long I spent time on them. Till one day. That day, he sat close to me as usual, started covering his arms all over my upper body. And after the tea break, it happened. His hand started to go down around my hips, then go toward my crotch. Almost unconsciously, I pushed the hand away. You don't like it? If you don't like it, I will stop. I did it because I love you. In geometry, we can always measure the distance between 2 points if they are on the same plane. Reptiles' lab and my crotch weren't on the same plane. At least not the same way as I love S and our stroll hand in hand on the beach. Can those 2 points join somehow at some point? I had no idea, but sadness to think if that happens. It was already dark outside. Dry, powdery snow started falling down. In my room upstairs, I opened a notebook I was sharing with S and started to write. Thank you.